Carol Burnett, the woman America once called its sweetheart, was known for her humor, her warmth, and her unmistakable grace. For decades, she made the world laugh without ever raising her voice. But even Hollywood's kindest heart has limits. And behind the laughter, there were moments that cut deep. Because there were men in her life who tested her patience, her trust, and her strength. Men she could never look at the same way again. It took nearly 70 years for Carol to finally open up about them. In her 90s, during a rare interview, she reflected not on her triumphs, but on the men who left her hurt, humiliated, and betrayed. Some were colleagues, some were mentors, some even friends. But they all had one thing in common. They underestimated the quiet power of Carol Burnett. The first betrayal, Harvey Corman. The first name on her list shocked everyone. Harvey Corman, her trusted co-star, her partner in comedy, the man audiences thought she could never work without. In the golden age of television, the Carol Burnett Show was the heartbeat of American laughter. Every Saturday night, millions tuned in to watch Carol and Harvey create magic together. On screen, they were perfect. Behind the curtain, the tension was starting to boil. By 1974, ratings were soaring. CBS couldn't get enough. But Harvey's mood had shifted. He grew restless, short-tempered, convinced that Carol's growing fame was stealing his spotlight. Crew members whispered about his temper, how he'd storm off, set, or snap at stagehands, but no one dared challenge him until one afternoon at Studio 33. They were rehearsing with guest singer Petula Clark when a lighting cue went wrong. Harvey's face fell into shadow, and he erupted. He threw his script, shouting, "After all these years, can't anyone get it right?" The room froze. Carol, sitting quietly in the audience seats, stood up. Her voice stayed calm, but her words were ice cold. "Harvey," she said, "if you can't respect everyone here, you don't need to be here." The studio fell silent. Not a sound, not even a cough. Harvey stared at her, speechless, then turned and walked out. The next morning, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner ran the headline, "Harvey Corman walks out on Carol Burnett." Hollywood buzzed with rumors. Had Carol really fired her best friend? She hadn't wanted to. But that day, she'd made the hardest decision of her career, to stand up for her crew, her dignity, and her show. 3 days later, Harvey called. "I was wrong," he said softly. "I want to come back." When he returned, he apologized to everyone, especially to Carol. She forgave him, but things were never the same. In later years, when asked about Harvey, she said gently, "He made me laugh more than anyone and gave me the biggest headaches." It was her way of saying what few in Hollywood ever did, that kindness doesn't mean weakness. The husband who forgot what they built. Joe Hamilton. But the next betrayal didn't come from a co-star. It came from the man she loved. Her husband, Joe Hamilton. They were once Hollywood's golden couple. She the star, he the producer, together building a television empire. He helped shape the Carol Burnett Show from the start. For years, they were the dream team. But slowly, success became competition. By the mid-1970s, Joe began to change. He insisted on final approval over guests, scripts, and even sketches before Carol saw them. He wanted control. And when she resisted, the arguments turned personal. Then came whispers, rumors that he'd been spending too much time with a young CBS editor. Carol stayed silent, hoping it was nothing more than talk. But in 1982, the truth surfaced. Her lawyer discovered that Joe had registered Hamilton Productions, signing spin-off projects from the Carol Burnett Show under his own name, among them Mama's Family, a sketch born from Carol's work, credited to him alone. When she confronted him, she asked one simple question. "Do you think it's fair to turn what we built together into something just yours?" His reply was cold. "It's business, Carol, not emotion." That was the moment it ended. In 1983, Carol filed for divorce. The court battle dragged on for nearly a year. She kept her name and half the show's profits, but lost the marriage that had once been her foundation. When reporters asked how she felt, she simply said, "We were the best team until he forgot I was more than a partner." After that, she vowed never again to mix love and control, and from that heartbreak, she built a new kind of strength, one rooted in independence, not approval. The late-night call. Marlon Brando, but one man's arrogance left her not heartbroken, but furious. That man was Marlon Brando. It was July 1972. The Godfather had just made Brando the most powerful actor in Hollywood, and one night at 3 a.m., Carol's phone rang. Half asleep, she picked up, only to hear a deep, unmistakable voice. "Carol," it said, "this is Marlon Brando." She thought it was a prank until he mentioned watching her show that night. He praised her, called her a real artist, and then the compliments turned personal. Too personal. Carol politely tried to end the call. But Brando kept talking. Charming, yes, but crossing the line. Finally, she said, "Mr. Brando, it's late. I have an early call tomorrow." And she hung up. By morning, the story was everywhere. "Marlon Brando calls Carol Burnett at 3 a.m., screamed the headlines. Brando's friends claimed he was smitten. Carol was mortified. She called her PR team, begging them to stop the rumors, but they spread faster than she could react. From that night on, she avoided him entirely, refusing to attend events where he'd appear. When a reporter later asked Brando about it, he laughed and said, "Carol takes things too seriously." That comment sealed it. It wasn't just a call. It was disrespect. From then on, Carol never answered the phone after midnight again, not even for CBS. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to subscribe. It helps us tell more untold Hollywood stories like this one. The public insult. Cary Grant. If Brando's call was private humiliation, Cary Grant's insult was public. It happened in 1968 at a Beverly Hilton gala filled with the biggest stars of the era: Lucille Ball, Jack Lemmon, Elizabeth Taylor. Carol was radiant, dressed in a red Bob Mackie gown. She approached Cary Grant's table to congratulate him on his Lifetime Achievement Award. Before she could finish, Grant smirked and said, "Oh yes, your show. The one where you wave your arms, make faces, and overact. I've never understood why people enjoy that sort of thing." The ballroom went silent. Carol didn't flinch. She simply smiled and replied, "Maybe people prefer laughing with real folks rather than with perfection." Then she turned and walked away. Within days, newspapers ran the headline, "Cary Grant and Carol Burnett, a frosty encounter." Television audiences were outraged. CBS even issued a statement praising Carol's humor born from empathy. Grant made it worse, telling a reporter that TV comedy had lost its elegance. He never apologized. But his condescension became one of the most famous Hollywood missteps of the decade. Carol never spoke badly of him. She just let her success speak louder. That same season, the Carol Burnett Show hit record ratings. And as Lucille Ball later said, "The best revenge is when they turn on the TV and still see you there." The longest Cold War, Lorne Michaels. But perhaps the longest wound came not from an insult, but an omission. For nearly 50 years, Carol Burnett, the queen of sketch comedy, was never invited to host Saturday Night Live. When the show premiered in 1975, critics assumed she'd be one of the first hosts. After all, SNL was comedy's new frontier, and Carol had built the foundation it stood on. But when her name was brought up, producer Lorne Michaels allegedly said, "She doesn't fit the spirit of the show." That line would haunt both of them. In the 1980s, fans wrote letters asking why she'd never appeared. NBC brushed it off, but insiders knew it wasn't an oversight, it was ego. The new guard didn't want to share credit with the old. When asked about it years later, Carol just smiled and said, "Maybe I'm not edgy enough for them." But her silence spoke volumes. Decades passed. Then in 2023, during her 90th birthday special, a journalist asked if she regretted never hosting SNL. She paused, smiled kindly, and said, "I guess they didn't need me, but I didn't need them either." That single sentence broke 50 years of silence. Fans erupted online with the hashtag Carol2SNL, demanding that NBC finally make things right. But Carol didn't push. She didn't need to, because she'd already proven something much greater. That legacy isn't granted. It's earned. The lesson of kindness and power. In the end, Carol Burnett's story isn't about grudges. It's about grace. Each betrayal, every insult, every slight taught her that kindness has its own strength. When men shouted, she stayed calm. When they belittled her, she kept creating. When they excluded her, she built her own stage. Hollywood changed 1,000 times over, but she remained its quiet constant, proof that compassion can outlast cruelty. In one of her final interviews, she said softly, "Some people think kindness means letting others walk over you. They're wrong. Kindness is power, just silent power." That's Carol Burnett, the woman who laughed through pain, forgave without forgetting, and taught Hollywood that the loudest revenge is a standing ovation